Hello, good day, and welcome to the Point 99 podcast. I'm Mr. Steve, and this is episode 7 of season 6. As always, I'm your host and running companion. That might be during those long runs, while you're catching your breath in between your interval sprints, or talking to you while you master your tempo sessions. You can find me on Instagram at Mr_Steve_runs. As for the Point 99, well, we're a running podcast for every runner of every ability. There's no pretentiousness here, we don't do cliques, and we certainly have no aims for grandeur through fakery. What you hear is what we are, great, honest chat with everyday runners about everyday running. The show has had one mission since its creation, and that's to help everyone along whatever path their journey with running is taking. It might be through relatable guests with their unique and inspiring stories, shared experiences, and the lessons that are learned throughout all of it. Or now, short educational segments designed to help improve all of our knowledge and make us more knowledgeable about the wider world of running. Hopefully by sharing all of this with you, you'll feel inspired and motivated to do amazing things, smash your goals, and be the best running version of you. But with that out of the way, I am glad to be back with you this week. Delighted even. We got some really awesome and very kind feedback for the official return last week, and it honestly makes it all worthwhile. I've said it before, I know I choose to do the podcast, no one's making me do it, but it really hits hard in the best possible way when there are really positive and nice DMs like that. I honestly appreciate every single person who listens, but especially all the folks who've stuck with us pretty much the entire 6 seasons. But if you are new here, through a guest or just happen to stumble upon us, I'd like to welcome you. I really appreciate all of you as well. I have no idea what the stats for the return were. I honestly couldn't care less, simply because of the feedback and knowing that at least one person found the episode enjoyable. On that, we actually received our second ever listener submitted email, and it's fantastic. Almost a Code Brown related story off of the back of the first of our new segments. And personally, it was also really great to hear that the segment was well received, even if timing wise it should maybe have come out a few weeks ago, before most of the spring marathons were well underway, but still, it will be there for value to someone at some point in time, maybe someone who's looking to increase their distance or improve their race day prep in the future. But with the email, I'll get to the contents of that in a minute. But there is another segment today, along with a fantastic chat with a returning guest from season 5. It might seem a bit odd to have someone back from just one season ago, but given that they were last on 22 months ago, a lot has happened. I'll get round to obviously the chat, but I'd also like to talk about my own running with the weekend ahead and the fantastic results of the London Marathon before we get to playing that interview. Firstly, let's get back to the email. It tickled me given that I've had a fairly recent occurrence similar to this, and I've banked that to own up to at a possible later date once the shame of it is all settled down. But it always puts a smile on my face hearing about someone else's almost shortcomings, especially on or near a race day. So last week's segment was on carb loading and race day preparations, with the constant reminder to not try anything new on race day or the week leading up to the event. The email sender, who will remain anonymous for now unless, and I know they will listen, unless they respond and say it's okay to name and shame them next week, echoed this message after an incident that took place on the lead up to their Chicago Marathon. I'm actually going to read the email at this point word for word, since I love the way they've written it, and to paraphrase any of it would do an injustice to the story. I'll clear my throat for this one. Hello, Steve. Since you've only received one email so far, I decided to share my experience here. I found the segment on carb loading incredibly informative. I could absolutely relate to the Nothing new on race day rule, though unfortunately I had to learn that lesson the hard way. At the time, I wasn't very educated on proper race nutrition. So before my second marathon, the Chicago Marathon, I decided to start using gels. In a stroke of pure genius, I introduced fueling during my very last long run. My favourite park is 10 miles from my house, so my plan was to run there and back for a full 20 miler. My equal brilliant strategy was to take one gel every 5 miles with water, which already showed how clueless I was. Part of my route ran through an industrial area with no businesses around. After 15 miles, I took my third gel right on schedule. About a mile later, my stomach started rumbling. I didn't think much of it until suddenly I needed a bathroom immediately. I knew there was no way I was making it the 5 miles back home, and I was so desperate I nearly ran into the woods. By some miracle, the only nearby business was a credit union, and thankfully they took pity on me and let me use their restroom. Crisis averted. Fast forward to race day in Chicago, I confidently began my fueling regime again. 1 GU packet every 5 miles. Like clockwork, after my third gel, the exact same nightmare began. Cramping, panic. By mile 17, I was standing in a line for a porta potty, desperately hoping I wasn't going to embarrass myself in front of thousands of people. After the race, I told my friend what happened, and she said, "There's a reason GU, or goo, rhymes with poo. Lesson learnt." I'm so glad to have you back now. I didn't have to add that last little bit, but I thought it was nice. But I loved that. There's something about a runner either ordinarily crapping themselves that really tickles me. Maybe it's because I'm numb to my own misfortunes in Edinburgh, or maybe it's because all men forever carry their inner little boy with them and boys find poo stories or just poo funny. This week's segment, though, is on electrolytes. It's the same as the first segment with regards to it being slightly better if it had been released weeks ago so that everyone got the benefits of its message ahead of marathon season, but it's always going to be here to listen back to, and it will hopefully prove useful to at least one person. I'll line that up now. Then, when it's done, we'll talk about my weekend ahead, which I alluded to last week, not knowing if I was going to release that episode when I did, or this week. Anyway, I digress. Let's roll this segment. Okay, another segment. I touched on it last time when I was talking about carb loading, but let's talk about electrolytes. With the carb loading, this one is also going to be one for those who are maybe fresher to running or who are less confident with the who, what, where, whens and whys of longer distance runs. Electrolytes are one of those topics that runners either completely ignore or they go full sports scientist about, and we all know folk in both camps. But the truth, just like myself, sits somewhere in the middle. But whether you're running in the summer, doing your longest runs of your training block, or you're in the thick of it on race day, understanding electrolytes, particularly sodium, can make a massive difference to how you feel and ultimately the outcome of your race. I'd like to think that most runners, or adults for that matter, understand that dehydration can be really bad for you, especially if you're dehydrated all the time or for long periods of time. Dehydration and electrolyte imbalance is one of the quickest ways to turn a great run into a run of absolute survival, which may sound a tad overdramatic, but it really isn't. Firstly, for those who might be less aware, let's address what electrolytes are and some of the things that might sound a bit sciencey. Electrolytes are the minerals in your body that carry an electrical charge, with the main ones associated with running being sodium, potassium, magnesium, and calcium. Realistically, however, the one that we really care about is sodium. The reason that we should care about sodium the most, or salt, is because it's the primary mineral lost while we sweat. Its regulatory function is to help with fluid balance, muscle contraction, nerve signals, and blood volume within your body. So when you sweat heavily, losing a lot of sodium, or that nice crush you sometimes feel around the rim of your cap or on your running clothes, think about all the unregulated aspects of your body that might start to cause you serious issues if you don't replenish their mineral helpers. Addressing why sodium really matters so much to us as runners, and it's a simple fact that when it drops too low, you can start to struggle to retain fluids, ergo, you become dehydrated. Your muscles can stop pumping quite so well, general fatigue or tiredness can start to seriously ramp up, and the risk of cramping can significantly increase. Your overall performance will then obviously drop. In more extreme situations, and again, this is getting quite sciencey, but if you replace only water but not sodium into your system, you can develop something called hyponatremia, where sodium levels in your blood become dangerously diluted. That is, of course, really rare, but it is one of the main reasons why you can't just chug loads of water during a race, strategically speaking, and why many of the majors and large-scale events will include additives into their water at certain stops, which I experienced during Amsterdam, and I've heard quite a few stories about Tokyo and their Picari Sweat. The name doesn't make it sound too appealing, but with the additives that it has, it's meant to be really good for you. The elephant in the room is that yes, too much salt can be bad for you, but salt or sodium in general is actually needed to keep your inner workings ticking over nicely. At this point, you may be asking about how much electrolyte intake or how much sodium tablets you might need to take to keep on top of your losses. Well, that's the thing. Same with carb loading. Everyone is different because everyone sweats at different rates. I'm a big old sweaty boy, so I'd likely need more than someone who's half my size who barely sweats. I am and can admit that I am a salt sweater, a big old crusty man, especially during the hotter running days in the height of summer. And you'll know yourself if you fall into that category, simply due to the salt marks on your clothes, the sting in and around your eyes from sweat, the gritty feeling on your skin, and your running cap looking like it's been through a snowstorm during 20-degree heat days. As with most things related to running, there's no one-size-fits-all electrolyte strategy. We can, however, look at how much sodium you might actually lose while you're running though, to give you an idea on how much is best to replenish. On average, sweat contains around 500 to 1,000 milligrams of sodium per litre of sweat, with some of the sweatier types of people losing as much as 1,500 milligrams per litre or more. So if you are one of the sweatier people, sweating around about 1 litre per hour or more on a generally hot run, say 90 minutes of heavy sweating, you might lose around 1,000 to 2,000 milligrams of sodium without realising it. Now, here's where people really get caught out and often do. Summer training and running events. During spring marathon training, when the months are a lot cooler or even too cold, you can get away with much more lackadaisical approaches to hydration. But for summer and autumn marathons, it's a different story altogether. By now, you'll have realised, and you should know, that hot weather increases sweat rate and fluid loss, subsequently increasing sodium loss and ultimately the strain on your heart. If you're doing long runs in July and August and just drinking plain water, you can easily end up feeling drained, experiencing headaches or dizziness, and generally losing energy much faster than you might have expected. It is easy to mistake any or all of these for a lack of fitness, but the answer is usually hydration or electrolyte balance, or lack thereof. Obviously, I do a bit of research for these segments. I don't know all of this off by heart. I'm not sciencey. I like to do a little bit of reading. And there is something that you can do to help test the estimate of how much sweat loss you are experiencing on a given run. If you weigh yourself before a run, then after that run, ideally where you haven't drunk that much or anything in a safest possible manner, then for every kilogram of body weight lost, That's roughly 1 litre of sweat. So using myself as an example again, if I went from 83.8 kilograms to 82.8 kilograms, that would be around about a litre of fluid lost or thereabouts. And that could be a great test to help you understand your personal sweat rate, which could be incredibly useful for those longer runs and races, and ultimately help you calculate how much electrolyte intake you would personally need. On that, and the general guideline that I've read, especially for longer runs and race days, is that you would need around about 300 to 700 milligrams of sodium per hour. Again, that all depends on temperature, sweat rate, and body size. It is a very individual thing for your individual sweat composition. Heavy sweaters or salty sweaters like myself might need as much as 800 to 1000 milligrams of sodium per hour during hot conditions, whereas most other runners during moderately long runs might reasonably only need around about 300 to 600 milligrams. But when do you actually need to top up your electrolytes though? Firstly, not every run needs them. If you're doing around about 30 to 45 minutes of easier paced running during cool weather, water is fine, if needed at all. Electrolytes become a lot more useful during longer runs in the hour or so range, during hot weather training, during half or full marathons, during heavy sweat sessions like speed intervals or hill sprints, or even during back-to-back training days when your body is sweating more on average than it might otherwise. Of course, there are easy to spot warning signs that you might actually need to top up your electrolytes, or handy hints that your sodium levels might be dipping just a little, some of which I've already touched on. However, if you're experiencing persistent cramp, dizziness, nausea, headaches, unusual amounts of fatigue, salt crust on your clothes, or even your stomach sloshing around like a washing machine from too much plain water, well, they're all signs. It might not always be down to electrolytes, but it is commonly the missing link. So the key takeaway from this segment, if you are sweating heavily for 2 to 3 hours, water alone can easily dilute your remaining sodium levels. To combat that, try mixing your fluid intake with electrolyte additives, specialist dissolvable tablets, powders, or gels. Don't ignore early warning signs. We've had plenty of guests who've openly admitted they've not tackled the issue in time and suffered as a consequence. But if you're getting a slight headache or minor cramp, replacing your sodium as soon as possible can stop it escalating more, as they can quickly do so. Taking huge chugs of electrolyte without testing is also not a great idea. As with carb loading, you're better to do some advanced testing to make sure it works for you. There are a lot of answers out there on the market, but not all might be your friend. There are products out there that might upset your digestive system, cause you bloating, or any other issues. Practice usually makes perfect, as with most things. Of course, there are a lot of options out there. There's sports drinks, electrolyte tablets and powders, salt capsules, and of course gels that contain sodium and other minerals. Most importantly, however, is don't wait until you feel dehydrated, as you will likely be well past the point of no return. If you are feeling thirsty or sluggish, you are generally going to be playing serious catch up. A steady, regular intake of hydration and electrolytes during longer efforts is a far better solution. My final thoughts, and none of this is anything to stress about or obsess over, but they are also not something that you should be ignoring. Simply keep in mind the weather forecast when you've got your longer runs programmed, or if you are going to be running for several hours. At the end of the day, electrolytes and hydration balance is one of the easiest, safest, and most legal performance enhancing drugs available to us as runners, and one of the easiest mistakes to avoid, having been there myself. But let us know what you think. Do you actually take any additional electrolytes or sodium tablets already, or have you come a cropper because of excessive sweating, cramping, or having to pull out of a race altogether? But with that, let's get back to the rest of the episode. Electrolytes are still something that I'm getting to grips with myself. I'm in a much better place with them than I ever have been before, but that is in part due to being a Protein Rebel ambassador and making full use of the range of products that they have available. That being said, yes, I am a Protein Rebel ambassador. Yes, I have a discount code that can be applied to the first purchase that you make with that code, but this isn't the place to share it. Hop on over to my Instagram and I'm more than happy to share it there. That doesn't mean though that I don't also still catch myself out with poorly timed intake and subsequent tightness, cramping and any number of other issues. But I certainly haven't suffered nearly as much as I might have done in the past. That is also a good way to transition into this week's guest chat for a reason that will become apparent during the course of the conversation. But first, we're going to talk about my weekend ahead. I'd like to also say, if you found that particular segment useful, please let me know, or even let me know what you feel I might have missed or your own thoughts on the topic. The whole topic is very much on the forefront of my mind as well, though, with the Ultra X Scotland 50 kilometre this weekend for myself. The weather is looking to be particularly good, so a lot of suntan lotion. It's been a bit intermittent in the Highlands this past week, but mostly sunny, and I've been trapped indoors working on elections. So I am making certain to pack a lot of emergency electrolytes and salts into my hydration backpack. And I like to say, along with the sun cream, to make sure I minimise any issues that I've had in the past that you're all very much aware of from Edinburgh. I am honestly, though, looking forward to the whole event, but I'm simultaneously very nervous about the whole terrain map. It's an area of the world that I'm very familiar with, having cycled the Loch Ness Tap several times and also run a good distance of the Loch Ness Marathon, albeit that's on the tar, and this particular route is very up and down in the South Loch Ness trail paths. It is practically my own backyard though, but yeah, just the usual pre-race jitters. For me, the most important thing is to have a good time rather than get a good time. Survival is more important over anything else. You will, however, hear about all of it in next week's episode, as I've pushed my previously booked guest for that week back a week to share the outcomes and a post-race digest for you all. And it might actually make next week's episode just a little bit shorter than how monstrous this week's one is. But like I say, I'm going to move swiftly into the chat with this week's guest because of how well-timed it would be to put it next to the segment about carb loading and everything that goes along with it. This week's guest is a radiant star of Instagram, especially for myself through my daily scroll, and someone I'm very pleased to welcome back for his second appearance. Episode-wise, today's guest joined us not that long ago, but in real time, it's been a while. It's hard to believe, but it's almost been 2 years since I had the pleasure of sitting down and having a great chat with this icon of Instagram during his first episode in June of 2024. Back then, we spoke about his commitment to everyday mileage, 5Ks, 10Ks, and his early forays into half marathons, which were all culminating into running his first marathon. Fast forward 2 years and it's several marathons deep for him now, with times tumbling, but moreover, he's branched out even further with ultra distances ticked off. If you'd like to hear his origin story, how he got started with running, the constant battles of running trails, ever present with bears, wolves and snakes, and his mental health battles, I'd highly recommend you listen back to Season 5, Episode 7. But for now, I'm delighted to welcome back the man with $1 million smile and one of the most supportive and all-around nicest guys on Instagram back to the show. It can be only one man, the Liverpudlian lunger, the Polish plodder, Matt is running, Matt Sutcliffe.
How do you follow that? How do you follow icon, $1 million smile? I feel like I'm on stars in their eyes.
No, it's all true. I think we covered a lot of that in the first time round as well, but no, it's all the truth.
Oh, it's lovely to be back anyway. I was going to say, can't believe it's been nearly 2 years.
Yeah, certainly. It doesn't feel that long since we last spoke, but yeah, plenty has happened in the 2 year gap, and hopefully we can get around to covering a lot of it today. But we'll start off with some pleasantries. How are you getting on today?
Super. Yeah, it's a busy time there. We'll obviously go into sort of the running, which is why we're here. But the legs are a bit tired from Sunday. I've been twiddling my thumbs a bit. I've not ventured out since the marathon on Sunday. So I'm so used to going out in the mornings. Work's busy. Little one's keeping me busy. It's all go. But yeah, life's good.
It wasn't just Sunday though. It was a triple header. There's no wonder you haven't ventured out again.
Well, I did it last year, and I've had some really nice feedback from a lot of people. Me following, I'm far from having the hundreds of thousands of followers that some do, but I've grown my following since we last spoke, and I've really connected with some fantastic people, some really good people, and the support that I've had since in the comments. I went out and did the 3 races. I did the same last year, and I don't really think anything of it. It's just something that I saw. I wanted to do. I wanted to make the most of the city, make the most of the weekend, and yeah, I hit a PB last year when I did it. So you think you're invincible when you do that. So I went out and did it, and I won't say it didn't go to plan. I enjoyed the weekend, but it was a tough one.
So we'll go back and we'll cover that in a little bit more detail. But because we know now from that intro you are several marathons deep, I would like to kind of start off by reintroducing folks to you. Well, so if they do want to listen to the origin stories, they can obviously go back. But where we left off, you were, I think, a matter of weeks away from your first marathon. I am quite keen just to let you wax lyrical about how that first marathon went. Then, moreover, I jokingly said to you, and I suppose things have changed for myself as well, but I jokingly said if you ever went to running ultras, we couldn't be friends anymore. I didn't know that until I listened back to the episode. But obviously things have escalated since. So I'm kind of just hoping that you'll elaborate a little bit more about how that first marathon went from someone who was primarily looking to do 5Ks and 10Ks, and you hadn't really long finished your first marathon or a couple of half marathons. So how it then developed from running that first marathon, was it Malaga, to then being several marathons deep, but also moreover now ultras as well. So I'm just going to let you take over, give an overview of everything you've done, and then we'll take it from there.
Lovely. Well, I've got a confession to make to start with. I told you before we started, I've actually not listened to our first episode. I don't like listening to myself. I don't particularly like talking about myself. But I remember what we spoke about, so the details are a bit sketchy. But I think I know where to start. Those who sort of know my story know that I moved over to Poland about 2.5 years ago. And I was running before, but when I came over here, I think you need to find something to not take up your time. I'm a busy guy, but something that you can really be passionate about. And I think the one thing that I carried over was my running. I'd always run, but I'd never really got stuck in and had any real structure. So when I came over, I think my first half marathon was round about 6 months before Malaga, which was in Rzeszów, which is I think that was my first half marathon race, and it seemed huge, when I went there, and I think there was only a couple of thousand people there, but it seemed huge to me. I was exhausted at the end. I think 1 hour 50, I think I got from there, and I had been training previously. I was made up. I was breathing heavily at the finish line, but I got the bug. I got the bug of an organised race, and I obviously signed up to Malaga, and we spoke. I think it was about it must be about 8-9 weeks out, I think, when we spoke. And I had a target in mind, which first marathon is a terrible idea. And I think 3 weeks after we spoke, I pulled up with a calf injury. So you couldn't write it. I've been training hard and 5 weeks out, the calf went pop. And as a 43-year-old, any sort of pop at my age is not something that you want to hear.
No.
So yeah, it was touch and go. It was really touch and go if I was going to make the start line. We combined it with a family holiday, so it wasn't something that I was going to overly stress about. But I literally did nothing until about 3 weeks before, about 3 days before, and I went out and I ran. I think 5 kilometers, just a few days before we flew out to Malaga. I wouldn't say I felt fantastic, but there was no reaction. So off we went, and out I went, and yeah, it was an experience. I think there was must have been about it was in excess of 10,000. I think the half and the full altogether. Um, I literally plodded around. It was about sort of getting round and doing what I could. And I think I finally finished in I think it was about 4 hours 40, which was well over where I targeted for, but I was made up to finish. And I scrambled my way home. It wasn't pretty, but I've obviously come back for more since, so it must have done something to me.
You've certainly embraced the punishment side of things.
I I quite well. Most people who do like a challenge, I like to think I've got thick skin and a high pain threshold.
Well, yeah, you support Liverpool, so you have to have.
Definitely got a high pain threshold, that's for sure. But yeah, I like to challenge myself. I think since I've taken up the running, we touched on it in the first episode. I think it's made me a better person. So why wouldn't you carry on with something that makes you a better person, makes you a better father, makes you a better partner, makes you a better person in general? So after that one, it was where else can I go from here? What can I sign up for? I signed up for the Malaga Marathon the following year while I was over there. So I thought we've got to carry on.
Yep.
So I think it's four marathons now and 3 ultras that I am deep. So
And it is very much international for you. And sure, you're a Brit abroad. You're a Liverpudlian in Poland, and you ran your first marathon in Malaga, but you've not kept all your marathons primarily or specifically the ultras to one location. You have spread. You've come back to more familiar shores, so you're kind of casting your net wider. As you've said there, it's kind of more obvious that you got the bug, you enjoyed that first experience, even though having a similar time to yourself in my first marathon, it's a very difficult thing to kind of wrap your head around when you've got ideas of grandeur for your first one, and it's a bit of a gut punch to then not get what you aimed for. But it's a really good goal to keep in mind, to work towards, and if it's the time that I'm thinking we've spoken about before, you've surpassed that time and you've got a phenomenal marathon time now. I've lost track of where I was going with that, but yeah, you've not just kept it to one location. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that, on where else you've run your marathons, where your favorite marathon is, maybe of the ones you've run so far, but also then the ultras and the differences between where you've run your ultras in Poland and then obviously coming to more familiar shores as well.
So Malaga now twice, and Krakow twice, including the one last Sunday. So that's really been a question of tying it in with time away with the family. The family have really bought into it. My young daughter, she loves it. She gets to take a sign to cheer on her dad, which is it's one of the reasons why I do it. I don't think there's anything better than having your daughter and your wife there at the finish line when you've completed something difficult. It's an amazing experience and an amazing feeling to have. So in terms of the marathons, they've been away. I've not done a home marathon yet. When I say home, I mean a UK one. Krakow really is my home marathon here. It's about 3 hours away, and Malaga just was a bit of a tradition going in December, which it's a real shame this year. They've moved it from December to November, which takes it away from the Christmas lights, which I was absolutely distraught about. So, but I've managed to sort of plan for that, which I'll touch on in a minute. So the road marathons have been I've been abroad, away from the UK, should I say. It's been the ultras that have been the real test. I wanted to push myself outside my comfort zone, and my Polish isn't fantastic. I get by. I'm learning every day. I do my best. But my first ultra was it was 40, 45, 46 kilometers. So it was a mini ultra, let's say, but it was in the lower Beskids, so in the lower regions of the mountains, which are about an hour and a half from us, and that was in the back end of the summer, or was it early summer? Can't quite remember, but by the way, it was warm, it was humid, it was in the forest, and it was something that I was just not used to. Trying to navigate my way around. My navigation is horrendous. So I had no idea what I was doing, no idea what I'd be fueling for. I went out and I just had a crack. I went out and I finished it. I finished about halfway in the field. And it was such an amazing experience being out there with all the wildlife and everything. It was fantastic. And so that was the one that got me the bug for that. And then I did a similar one, but in the winter, which was in the snow, in the thick snow, which was again a real challenge, but again just as exciting. So I keep testing myself, different conditions, different distances. We pushed that one up there to I think it was over 30, over I think it was more towards the 50, and then the big one, which was completed in a couple of months ago in Chester, which was my first 50 miler, which I picked up an entry to that one. I just felt like I wanted to do it, and I was waiting for an entry to come up, and I said, look, do you want to sell it? I got it. And I thought, right, well, I'm coming back to see my family. Let's have a crack. So yeah, a bit of this and a bit of that, home abroad. And if you say my favourite, I'm better at road running. I enjoy the trails.
Yeah.
And where I live, I'm very, very lucky where I live to be running in the mountains and to be running in that thick snow. And it's just an unbelievable experience. So if you were to ask me my favourite marathon so far, I love Malaga for the experience. I love Krakow for the time. And in terms of my favourite ultra, I'd probably have to say the local ones here. The winter one was just it was just something different.
The photos and the videos and that you posted of that one, it looked horrendous in the amount of effort it would have taken to run in that the conditions that you had at that particular event. But you didn't stop. Well, I was going to say you didn't stop smiling. You actually don't stop smiling. That's a common theme with you in a lot of your content. You're always happy, always positive, and always smiling. But that particular event, you genuinely looked in your element. I don't recall seeing so much content for the original, but that's just a lapse of memory on my part more than anything. But then with you saying the heat, the humidity, the temperature, you've certainly mixed things up, because Chester was a completely different ball game. It was sodden, it was muddy, it was dry, it was torrential.
It was horrendous.
It looked horrendous. It looked the worst conditions I've seen for a GB Ultra in a long while. But you certainly don't shy away from mixing things up. And I guess for someone who is like me, they categorize themselves as a road runner, specifically as their favorites, but then do ultra and do trails and fully embrace what it is to do those. It's so nice to see someone throwing themselves into it.
Well, again, we touched on it before. I'm no influencer. I don't have a niche on Instagram. When people see me, they see an average family man. Just somebody who enjoys doing what they do. I've got my own backstory, but we won't run over that. In terms of sort of who I am now and who I've been for a long time, is I'm a happy person. I enjoy life. I feel blessed. I've got a healthy family. Why wouldn't I smile? I love to smile. I like to try and make other people smile. And all these events that I do. I found it on Sunday when I was out running a marathon that didn't necessarily go to plan. I found myself in a trance, just in a smile. I was just really enjoying myself, and I think I think every day is a blessing. That's how I like to live my life. I'm not blessed with a bulging bank account, and I'm a working class guy. I have to work hard for everything that I get, and that includes my running. But I love it. I love every day. Every day is a challenge, and I think I'm a firm believer that there's something every single day that you can be grateful for. And there's people who are really struggling out there, who find that a really difficult thing to do, which it is. But I always say try and focus on one thing. There is always one thing there that you can focus on and that makes you happy. And that's what puts that smile on my face every day, and probably leads me to challenge myself. I don't think the wife's too happy sometimes when I'm showing her images of me sliding down near the edges of cliffs down the snow. But I wasn't expecting that, but that's what happens when you challenge yourself with these different events.
That reminds me of actually, since you didn't listen back to it, the whole chat that we had. As I say, I do encourage anyone to go back and listen. But for your benefit, you did actually mention the fact that the reason you started posting again on Instagram after having taken a little bit of a break for the birth of your daughter and the move to Poland, one of the main reasons you started posting again was your wife, because she missed seeing you posting about your running, seeing the selfies, seeing the smile, and seeing you enjoying things. So that, I suppose, for everything you've said so far, using the opportunity to have a family mini break away for the marathon just passed, to have a holiday at the end of the year, keeping it family involved, it suppose is influential in that way. It shows other families or family runners, both male and female, that you can do it. It isn't, and you are influencing the fact that it is a positive outlet, especially for young ones to see that you can do things. It can make such a big difference in your day. You can put a smile on your face for those running early mornings and then leading the rest of the day the way that you kind of mean to continue by putting a smile on your face. You mentioned there a little bit about focus as well. So with everything that you've done so far, and you've done your marathons, you've done your ultras, what is the focus now? You're going to be going back and doing more marathons and getting the family involved, but what is your main focus and goal and drive going forward past marathons?
No, this is the tough one. I'm signed up for a 100 miler in September. Now I've got a big decision to make as to whether I defer for a year. Not that I can't do it. I believe I can do it. Just after my marathon last week, I think I've got a big time in me. And when I say a big time for a 43-year-old who's been running for 2 years consistently. I'm not breaking any world records here. But I've got a place at Valencia in December. And we're going to tie that in. I'm going to meet the family down in Malaga, which has become now our tradition. So I'm heading down there on my own. So anybody who's doing Valencia, definitely shout me up. Yeah, I could do a bit of support when I'm there, and I'm going to be there on my own. But I've got a real drive to hit a good time, or what I perceive as a good time, at marathon distance. I feel physically fit at the moment. I feel great. Just certain things haven't gone to plan on the marathons, and it's nobody's fault but my own. You've got to get it right, haven't you? But the 100 miler is where I see it going, and I've even got half an eye on a multi-dayer. So yeah, distance increasing and probably speed slowing. But just anything that can challenge me. I love the idea of putting myself through something that lots of people maybe think that I can't do, that people in my past thought that I can't do, or people who even know now would say, "How can you do that?" I love a challenge, and I love, even to a certain extent, me thinking, "Can I do it?"
Mm-hmm.
So longer, further, more challenging within reason. I don't fancy a divorce, so I've got to.
Can I pry and ask, is the time that you have in mind BQ?
Yes,
Yeah, I think
yeah,
you've got that in you. I do.
yeah. I mean, if we're talking times, I always say you see a lot of people. One thing these days that it frustrates me no end is you people can't have a conversation about things these days without being one side or the other.
Mm.
So you've got to be time focused or you're just finish lines. I don't see any reason why somebody can't celebrate being time focused. I'm very time focused and very challenge focused. It doesn't mean that I don't enjoy just crossing the lines. And I think the people who complete any distance should be celebrated, but there's no reason you can't be both.
Mm.
Um,
Exact. Your case in point from last weekend. The
Definitely.
goal went out the window. You had a good time.
Exactly. So I think you can be both. You don't need to pick a side.
Mm.
But at the moment, at my stage in life, I'm still young. 43 is no age these days, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not 23 anymore. So I do think there's a time in me. There's going to be a time when I slow down. It happens to everyone. Father time gets everybody. But at 43 and where I am now, I do think there's a big time in me. 3:33 at Krakow last year was my personal best.
Mm.
It was 4:05 on Sunday, so I was nowhere near. But I'm fitter than I was when I did the 3:30 last year. I was really hoping for around about 3:15 before it just all went to pot. And at 3:15, another 15 minutes to get towards the 3 hour mark where I'm starting to think that is definitely doable. So, and plus I go up an age group next year, which is fantastic. So that will, I
Yes.
mean, it's only 5 minutes or so. It's getting harder, isn't it, to qualify? But yeah, I'd really like to have a real crack at that, which is why I'm thinking of me 100-mile deferral, because I think over the next year, I think I can at least put myself in the conversation.
And at least that way, if you aim for time while you feel that you've got it in you to do it, it gives you next year to work on distance. That could be more ultras building into even a bigger ultra, because 100 miles is no mean feat. It's a big old beast to crack. We know plenty of people in the community that have tried it and been unsuccessful. But with getting a BQ, I think you've got it in you. I don't say that lightly because I've seen all the training you're doing. We're similar sort of paces when it comes to marathon running. I obviously have height on you, so
A
I'm
lot of
meant to
height
have
on
bigger
me.
stride.
Most people do.
But with having started regular gym work myself, now you touched on this in your first interview that you don't really do too much in the way of stretching and strength and conditioning, and you were going to work on that before the first marathon. But where I'm going with this is because I'm in the gym more often, and there is a very good marathon runner who is a supervisor in that gym. And he said to me, looking at my times, being familiar with my running, he sees no reason why, with the right training, focus, and conditioning, why I shouldn't be running BQ, which for our age group at the moment is 3:15. He thinks it's easily achievable. For you, then, I think it's easily achievable. And with the age category changing, you're going up an extra 5 minutes. So 3:20 is easily there. But no, I think you've got the fire there to do it. You've got the ability there to do it. It's just having the right event, the right conditions, and the right preparation. Because you've got the fitness. And Valencia is a very, very fast marathon. There's a lot of racing snakes there that can drag you along and help you out. So go for it.
Yeah, you touched on the strength. I've been working on that already. I think from now until Valencia, which is why I've got the decision to make about the 100-miler, is I want to. There's not much of me, but I'd like to take off a percentage of body fat. I'd sort of like to trim down a touch, which will help. Work on the strength. I don't necessarily need to look any more of a distance. I'm about 70 kilometers a week, between 60, 70 kilometers a week at the moment, which is, I think, is enough. If I can add in the strength there, I feel comfortable where I am, and obviously stay injury free. I think
Yeah.
that's the main one. The last few marathons, I've only nailed one out of four. So I don't sit here and claim to be an expert marathon runner. I've got me preparation. I mean, you don't run 2 races before you run a marathon. It's just not really the done thing, but it's the experience.
You obviously do.
But for the two for Malaga, it's been fueling conditions, so everything's got to come together. You can't say it wasn't your day. I don't believe that.
No.
It's down to you to get it right. There are things that can throw you off, but you've got to make sure you get all the controllables controlled before you do it. But yeah, there is one in there for me. I've just got to nail it, and I only need to nail it once.
Then, and you should never take my advice. But if you were to take my advice, I would say defer, take a good hard crack at it. And statistically speaking, most 40-year-old guys are running some of the best times they'll ever have run if they're not elite athletes already and done it in their 20s and their teens. So give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? You've got a year to defer that 100-miler, and if anything was to go ping, you can get recovered by then.
That's the concern. I think as you get older, I've always had problems with my calves, and something going pop is the one. I've pulled back on speed training. That's something that I need to do if I'm going to get there. But yeah, we'll continue working on it. I'm sure it's there for me, and I say there's plenty on there. If it doesn't work out, I'll try something else, and I'll send a selfie smiling, to Instagram again, and do about running 5K around here. And it doesn't matter where I run, what time I run, who I run with. I enjoy doing what I do.
Just out of interest as well, before we wrap things up, is the influence of you running rubbing off in the family at all?
I'd really like to say so with my daughter. I think she enjoys the events more than the actual run, but I'm working on it. I'm definitely working on it. My aim is to show her that she can do what she can do. I want to be a good dad, and I want to be a good husband. That is if I do that, then I'm a success in life. And I want to show that she can do hard things. I'm sure a lot of people will be familiar with Andy Glaze, who is an influencer, and I think he is absolutely fantastic to see somebody who can do that. And he always talks about doing hard things, and he says, "Smile, or you're doing it wrong," and that's sat behind me on which side, whichever side.
Yeah, it's on your right, my left.
Yeah, it's sat there saying, "Smile, or you're doing it wrong." My wife gave me that, and she's fully behind me. So when you've got the support of your family, and you've got the right mentality, then you don't have to be the quickest in the world. As long as you're enjoying it and you're doing the things that you enjoy, that's the most important thing.
Perfect. That's a really good way to wrap things up. That's such a nice ending to that. Well, thank you very much once again, Matt, for coming back on. Hopefully it won't be another 2 years before we have another conversation.
No, that's not leaving too long. Well, hopefully it'll be with the Boston qualifier next time we speak. That'd be really nice. But
that would be a perfect third episode. And we don't have we had a third episode with anyone? I don't think we have. So that would be a great opportunity.
Well, it depends on your listening figures, doesn't it? I don't know whether people want to listen to me, so we'll have to see.
I have never focused on listening figures. That is not my aim at all. It is just to have good conversations.
One thing before we go, if I can say that, I'll be looking. There's a few races that I'll be looking to do over in the UK. I would love to meet up with a few people over in the UK. I know you're right up north. I've got a couple of people who you'll be speaking to, and there's a lot of people that I've connected with. I'd love to meet up with a few people and run one. Maybe an ultra. Maybe that could be an option going forward.
Well, you never know. Get your ballot in tomorrow at the time of recording. Get your entry in for the London Marathon ballot. Starts tomorrow. There could be an opportunity that, if the stars align, it could be a fantastic team up there. But no, I would very much like that too. I'd like to kind of to go to slightly further afields for myself, run another couple of marathons, and explore the wondrous areas that we have in the UK, and maybe come to Poland as well, which I do have a Polish boss now, and he does try and encourage the trips away, and speaks about how nice Poland is. So no, maybe I can't
speak highly enough. If you get the chance to come over to Poland, anybody, I'm down in the south, come over and do it. It's absolutely spectacular.
No, as I say, it's been a good old chat again. And we'll have you back in a heartbeat. But thank you very much for being the first returning guest for the return of the podcast. That's been a pleasure, as always. But keep smiling, Matt. And I'll look forward to that BQ.
Pleasure. It's lovely to speak to you.
As with the last time we welcomed Matt to the show, it was an absolute pleasure to have him here with me, speaking about progress and major milestones that he's made with his running over the past few years. He's also one of the most friendly, inspiring and supportive people I've had the pleasure of connecting with through Instagram, even though he's extremely humble and would argue otherwise. Really, if you don't already, please pop on over, give the legend a follow. I'd highly recommend it. It's matt.is.running if you want to give him a follow. You'll be glad to hear we're into the final stages of this monster episode now, but I did warn you in last week's episode that there was a bit of a whopper on the horizon. Before we finish off though, I wanted to congratulate all the awesome people who smashed goals, having a great time and running their very best runs at the weekend at the London Marathon and the previous week at Manchester, which I forgot to add because I wasn't sure when the episode was coming out. Obviously, there were two extremely notable records smashed at the London Marathon, changing the elite game forever for both male and females. But throughout the masses, there were thousands of superstars, friends of the podcast, and many strangers absolutely living their best lives, running their best runs. I obviously can't not mention my friend and previous co-host, Runnerman Steve, whose photos proved it's not always about getting a great time and that it's more important to have a great time sometimes, embracing the crowds and the vibes and generally being in high spirits and coming out of the whole ordeal smiling from ear to ear. Anyway, I think I've had everyone's ear myself for long enough this week, so I'll start to wrap things up. Thank you as always for joining me today, downloading or streaming the podcast. It will forever be the best way you can show your support for the show. After being a little unsure about where the show was being published to last week, other than Spotify, it was confirmed to me by TJ, thank you very much TJ, that we are on Apple. And I'm also going to start trying to get back to grips with getting things on YouTube again, because I know there are a few people who used to listen over there. Finally, you can follow us on Instagram by searching the Point 99 podcast if you'd like to do that. That's the best way you can get in contact with us, through the DMs, but you can also drop an email to the point99podcast@gmail.com if you want to give any feedback on today's episode or the segment, or just anything if you want to get in contact. As I said at the beginning, you can also find me over at Mr_Steve_runs. But like I said earlier in the episode, next week is all about my post Ultra X Scotland 50 kilometre. It's going to be a bit of a digest, so there's no guest. I'll maybe try and make the episode a little bit more compressed to make up for just about to hit the hour mark on this one. But we do have a couple of amazing guest episodes coming up in the weeks following that. Two new guests to the show. One who is an absolute nutcase. He is so inspiring and motivating and just a positive figure for the Instagram running community and the wider running community. And then we have an absolute amazing ultra runner joining us. I can't wait to share more about that later once I get it all booked in. But yeah, if it's the person that I'm hoping it will be, who has confirmed they're joining us, I just need to make sure that they are available for that particular episode. I'm going to be milking them dry for all that they're worth, for Glasgow to Edinburgh, for any other ultras that I managed to fit in between now and then, and just generally having a good old chat with him, because he's such a nice guy and I can't wait to have him on the show. But yeah, we'll also have another segment to get your ears around, I can't remember what that one is about, but they are all pre-recorded. They all hopefully are useful. But I would like to hear your feedback on those if you're willing to give it. But until then, and as always, I hope you stay safe, enjoy your runs, and you will hear from me soon.